What's up, everybody? Thomas Claxton here, and you guys are tuned in to the Sitting In with Thomas Claxton podcast. This is your stop for the behind-the-scenes dive straight into the heart of the music industry. Here, I interview some of the world's best in multiple fields, ranging from performers to producers and engineers, manufacturer CEOs, technologists, entrepreneurs, representative firms, technicians, attorneys, CPAs, and much more to give you guys an insider's perspective. The advice, the road stories, and the insider's point of view on an industry and where its future lies. It's all right here. And remember, if you guys like what you see, like, share, and subscribe. You guys sit back and enjoy. Thanks a lot. Let me puff my meds real quick. Let's see. Asthma sucks, dude.
Kind of like Elon Musk smoking pot on
well, no, this is just a major contrast. I'm puffing an inhaler, you're puffing a cigarette.
Yeah.
Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Mario Cipollina.
Hey, Thomas, how you doing?
Oh, brother. I'm, I'm not a zombie yet, so that's a plus, I would think, to not have a desire for human flesh.
Well, congratulations on your new show. This is new and different for you.
The thing is, dude, it is new, and it's gotten some great reviews so far. And
good.
I had been wanting to do a podcast for a while, but my podcast was going to be kind of more focused on the, I guess you could say, like the behind the scenes stuff of the music industry. There's a lot of, and not necessarily that every guest has to focus only on that subject, but there's a lot of different angles of the industry that many people are simply unfamiliar with.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
And if you ask the general public, they just kind of look at the music scene as, well, these guys they record music and they put it out and I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more to it than that. So,
sure. I
mean, I've been interviewing some of the big manufacturer CEOs and the attorneys that do the contracts, the CPAs for these big music companies, different people like that, and some music reps, producers, engineers, and of course the artists like yourself.
Right.
So I'm just trying to give not necessarily just a younger generation, but just any generation that is uninformed, a little bit of a platform here to where they can go on and watch some of these guests and hear the things they have to say and get a different take on it. You and I have had the conversations before about my views on the industry and things like that, and how I think networking and really being good at the actual business of it is very important.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty well convinced that most people don't get any further in the business because they don't understand the business.
That's right.
But
well, I used to understand the business, but I don't anymore. Oh, it's changed so much that I don't even recognize it. So
well, and then that may be true, but still, man. I mean, you're always a modest dude, bro. I mean, that's one of the things I love about you, man. To this day, I swear to you, people ask me who some of my favorite people that I met in the business are, and Mario Cipollina comes up like in the first 2 or 3. No doubt. I mean, you're in the top 3, bro. I mean, you
in spite of my phone access, right?
What's that? Except for your phone access. But, you're not the only one like that. I swear to God. Like, the guy who reminds me the most of you about telephones is Kenny Olson. And Kenny Olson was the founding guitarist for Kid Rock.
Okay.
And getting Kenny on the phone, I got one day I got to figure out some way to get like some data testing to see which one of the two of you is the most difficult to contact. But
I used to live by the telephone. I used to always have the phone with me, and now I just don't care. And it's not that I don't care about you. I always would love to hear from you, but I just don't just don't live by the phone anymore.
Dude, I don't blame you at all, man. Seriously. Like, I've pretty much already determined how I'm going to go out one day.
Yeah.
When I decide that I'm kind of done with it, you know, which maybe that's when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old. I don't know. I don't have a timeline on it. Oh, you ain't damn that old. You ain't 80. So, you know, the thing is, like, to me, it's just one of those things like what I'm kind of probably going to do is I'm going to go on the most offensive rant you've ever heard in your life.
Right.
And I'm not going to leave anybody out. I'm just going to go off on everybody. I mean, that way nobody can say I singled anyone out, because I'm going to include the whole shebang. Okay. And then when I'm done, I'm going to hang up my phone. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to chunk it off a bridge, and I'm just going to vanish to where, and that way I can pretty much guarantee that nobody ever wants to find me again, because I pissed off so many people.
God, I hope I'm here to see that.
Dude, you know, you just never know, man. I mean, I tell you, I was getting a little burnout on certain things, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and it got me away from them by default. So I've kind of recharged a little bit, man. What have you been up to since all this stuff went down? You've been kind of sheltering?
It has not affected me at all.
Dude, you're not the only person I've heard say that.
Not in the least. It hasn't affected me at all. I mean, sure, I wear a mask when I go to Safeway,
right?
But as far as my comings and goings, and it hasn't affected me at all. I don't really go places where people are.
Sure,
as you've noticed.
I get it.
Yeah, so it hasn't really affected us at all.
Dude, I tell you, I hear that from a lot of musicians too, man.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of musicians, especially, you know, ones that have been, you know, like yourself, that have been around some massive crowds in their careers. You know, once they get to that point, you know, where they're kind of done with it, then they're done with it. They don't really want to get back around big crowds. They kind of like the solidarity of just being quiet and alone and things like that, you know. And I kind of get it. I mean, even though I haven't been on it to that big of a scale, I've certainly played in front of big crowds, but, you know, not for that period of time. And hell, man, I get aggravated sometimes just walking into a Walmart.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why. I'm still not sure if it's because I don't know why I have chosen to be such a basically recluse, but it doesn't feel like it has anything to do with my history. It just feels more. Maybe I'm shy. I never was much for going to parties and stuff and going out. I can't say that. I used to tear it up pretty good, actually. But usually in small numbers, you know, small parties, small intense partying.
For sure, man. So for the folks that are going to be watching this podcast, you know, today we have bass guru, wizard, whatever terminology you want to use there, Mr. Mario Cipollina, here with us in the podcast. Mario, founding bass player for Huey Lewis and the News. And, you know, you've definitely influenced a ton of people, man. I mean, your songs, your playing, your style, man, it's all excellent. And you've worked with a plethora of people in the industry. You've pretty much done it all, man. And let me tell you, I mean, you know, let's start back in the beginning of it, brother. What inspired you to get your start in music? I mean, I'm taking it you were in school. You've probably been doing this since you were a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was a kid, they offered music lessons to anybody who wanted them, and so in the first grade, they had an assembly room. All the kids met in the assembly room, and the symphony players came and they played just a few seconds of their instrument, and so oboe, flute, clarinet, every single one, and then we had a mimeographed piece of paper with a drawing of all the different instruments. And if you heard an instrument that you liked, you could circle it, and you would get lessons.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and they played all these different things, and when the guy drew a bow across the string bass, and the room just went, and I just fell in love with it, and honestly, to this day, when I pick up an instrument and I play my first note of the day, you know, be it at sound check or whatever, I always have this moment where I just feel like lucky, like really fortunate that I have something in my life that I love that much, and it's still that way. I mean, I'm basically retired, but I still, when I pick up a bass, same feeling, I
don't think the feeling ever goes away, man. I mean, that's why when I hear musicians say, I'm done, I'm like, yeah, but I don't think that's the same as working a 9-to-5 shift work job. One day you just decide you're done. I mean,
Well, yeah. Well,
it's kind of ingrained in you, isn't it?
Well, you and I had one of those moments where I told you I was done, and I think what I meant was I'm done chasing my professional tail around. I just well, for one thing, my back is shot. I just can't. I can't stand and hold an instrument, and so it's hard to pimp yourself out as a rock and roll bass player who sits down, But honestly, I'm at a point where music is very personal to me. It's not really a professional thing right now. It's a personal thing. And in fact, I made a record that was so personal I never released it, and a lot of people are beating me up about that and saying I should release it and stuff, and I may eventually, but even that is just so personal. It's just hard to share it. It's hard to let it be just something that anybody can have. I don't know. I don't really understand my output is.
Well, what's wrong with writing music for yourself? Just to where you can only enjoy it. I mean, not everything has to be for someone else to be impressed by and enjoy.
Right. I think that's where I'm at. But as a musician right now, I think that's where I'm at. It's a personal thing, which means, and if it's gotten personal, it's kind of private, and I'm kind of retired. It doesn't mean I'm not playing. It doesn't mean I'm not playing. I'm playing with you anytime. Anytime you say, I'll be there.
You're a sweetheart, man. I mean, seriously. So when did it become obvious that this was you, man? This was the future. Music was the path you were gonna pursue. I mean, yeah. I mean, I know in high school, your band Soundhole. I mean, was it at the high school years there?
Yeah, that was at high school. I'm sorry, I got off topic. So we back to where we were at. I started taking lessons in school when I was 7, and I enjoyed it more than anything else in school, that's for sure. But and then I had my high school band Soundhole, and when I decided to make it all I was going to do was when I was 17. My best friend and guitarist was killed. His parents were murdered. And he had been the leader of all the bands I was in, and so I had to basically, since there was no one to lead us anymore, I had to decide, and no one was going to lead us. I had to decide either I was going to basically hang it up or I was going to figure out how to be a band leader, and so that's basically when I made a commitment to myself and my bandmates. Oops, sorry. To be the leader of the band and do the best I could for bookings and stuff, and I wish I could say that I made a commitment to myself to be the best musician I could be, but that wasn't really that. It wasn't really that. That wasn't what was important at the time. Was staying afloat was more important. But then I was about 17 when I made a commitment. I already was playing, for years at that time. I've been playing for 10 years. So, and then I had other gigs when I was 15. I got hired by Tom Donahue. Do you know who that is? He ran KMPX radio station up here, KMPX, KSAN. He's like the father of underground radio, really.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I've heard you mention him before.
Yeah, I went to school with his kids,
with his son.
And so he knew of my playing, and Pete Sears, who was playing in he had a band called Stoneground. Tom Donahue was managing them, and they had an album that had just come out, and conveniently, the bass player, Pete Sears, decided he had to go to England to cut an album with Rod Stewart, who went to cut Gasoline Alley. And so now all of a sudden the band just had an album come out and they didn't have a bass player. And so he hired me to play bass. I was 15 years old. And the first show we had was at the Hollywood Bowl, so I had to leave school early.
Oh, wow.
I got a note from home to leave at 10 o'clock in the morning.
That was the first show.
that was the
Hollywood Bowl. Wow.
Yeah. So I went, and the limousine was out in front of the Tam High, my high school, and I got in the limousine and drove away. And I remember very clearly looking back at the clock tower of the school. And thinking, I don't think I'm going to be seeing much of you anymore, you know. And it was kind of things to come, you know.
Sure.
But I always kind of I never really worried about me being successful. And I always kind of figured I don't mean this egotistically, but I always thought things were going to work out, you know.
Well, life does normally. I mean, at least it works out, in my opinion, like it's meant to, whether for good or bad. I mean, you know, and
it was kind of like I had read an astrology report or something that said I was going to be successful, and so I just relaxed and didn't worry about it, you know.
Yeah, I read a fortune cookie that told me that one time, and you know, then I ate it, and I was like, "Oh, shut up!" I tell you, man, you know. So let's see here. So you mentioned Soundhole.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for people listening at home, explain who the members of Soundhole were.
Okay.
And how the Soundhole and what was it, Huey's group Clover merging.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. But the Soundhole in the band were Bill Gibson, the drummer, who ended up being the News' drummer, and John Foray, a couple other guys, and Johnny Cola, who ended up being the singer and sax player with the News, and we were friendly rivals of another band that came from Tam High School called Clover, and we had it was our competition was kind of basically posters, you know, like we had,
no harm in it.
Yeah. We'd have a show. We'd play the same show at this little club in Marin, and so we'd make posters that had Soundhole in big letters and Clover in little tiny letters. And Clover would do the same thing. They'd make a poster with Clover in big letters and Soundhole in little tiny letters, and then we'd go around for the 2 weeks before the show, and we'd put our posters up over each other's posters. And we did this every time we had a show.
So it was a friendly rival. There was no West Side Story stuff kind of happening.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, you could count on the poster war happening for sure.
Sure.
And so after years of us, both bands independently trying to make it and not, we all basically quit the bands, and so there was a period of about a year where we were all kind of floating. And Huey, who had been in England previously, sorry about the pop, he got a record deal for $6,000 to cut a single of Exodus, a disco version of Exodus. I don't know why. I don't know who came up with this idea. And so it's called Exodisco.
Oh, wow. Is there a copy of that anywhere?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah?
But not out there.
Do you have a copy of it?
Yeah.
Oh,
funny.
boy.
It's so funny.
One day when there's no recordings going on, I got to.
God, it's so bad. It's so bad. So we cut this version of Exodus, and we only spent about $1,000 of our budget, out of our $6,000. So we had all this money left over, and we said, well, let's cut a bunch of our own stuff, so for fun. So I think we cut 6 or 7, I think 7 songs of our own. Some were Johnny, I had one. Sean had one, and a couple of friends of ours had songs, and we recorded them. And the wife of the owner of the recording studio Patty Gleason, loved this tape. And she was listening to her car, and she just telling our friends about it, and she made a point of getting a copy of the tape to who ended up being our manager, Bob Brown. He was the manager. He managed a band called Pablo Cruz then. Oh yeah, and yeah. So Bob got a copy of it, and he fell in love with it, and he called us all. He called each of us, and I actually couldn't go to the meeting because I was in New York. I had gotten a job playing for Foreigner, and
that's a hell of an accomplishment. I love Foreigner.
Yeah, you know what? You're not going to believe this. I got the job playing bass with Foreigner, and I had to sing all the high parts.
Oh,
all the background high parts.
Well, you could do it.
Well, I could never do it now, but I was determined to get that job. I really wanted it, and I worked, and I could sing all the high parts, man, higher above the singer.
Yeah.
I just can't believe it.
Dude, their harmonies are some of the best, man.
Insane.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and what year was this now? Late 70s?
19. Yeah, that was 78.
Okay.
78, and we're just coming up on 79, and. I had actually gone to Japan and played the jazz festival with Tony Williams in 78. And so Huey called me up and said, we had a meeting with this guy, Bob Brown, and he wants to manage the band. We're not a band. He said, but he offered us $150 each a week, and he says all he wants to do, he wants 6 months to get us a record contract. He says, if he doesn't get us a deal, he'll bail. And I had just gotten this job, and it was really high paying. It was really prestigious, and I did not like the environment at all. I was in New York. I didn't know anybody. These guys were all big rock stars, and I really wasn't at all. And so it was actually more comfortable for me to bail on Foreigner than it was to stay.
So you quit Foreigner?
Yeah, and came home.
I can't even imagine. Wow.
It was kind of a hard decision and kind of not. Just it was so lofty doing that gig. It was especially
during that time period. I mean, that was like their heyday, man. I mean,
they were huge
in the late 70s.
Yeah. So it was pretty scary to have gotten that gig, Sure. So I got in it and got out of it, all within about 3 days. And I came home and we started the news, and Bob pulled it off. He got us a record deal, because it didn't pan out really right away. It was we were making $150 a week for a long time,
Sure. And that's another part of it that a lot of young players today, they don't understand, man. There's a process of paying your dues. Mm-hmm. And it is not instant. And I think going off what you just said there, I think that's one of the biggest problems with today, to be honest with you. So many people expect things to be so fast because we live in such a fast-paced society. And they don't understand that some things are not like modern internet, man. I mean, you can't just click on your career and make your career happen at the snap of a finger. I mean, a lot of times it takes years. Yeah, that's right. They
don't understand the amount of work that might be involved. They think they're going to win a contest and,
Oh, yeah. I'll get on a reality show. Somebody will discover me on TikTok or YouTube or something, and
right
there you go. I mean, it's on for me, and it's like, I'm not saying that stuff never happens, but it's really rare, even in 2020.
Yeah, it's about the same odds as winning the lottery.
Right, just about. I mean, getting hit by lightning or something. I mean, what's the odds of it? But to be honest with you, Mario, I mean, you say it didn't happen instantly. It took a long time. You were still making the $150 a week, but to me, that's what makes you appreciate it, man, so much. I mean, the fact that that where you're at right now, when you finally get there, was the result of all of that hard work and the sacrifices that were made. And I think when you have to go through that, it makes you really appreciate and put things into perspective a lot more than it would have been if it was just handed to you instantly on a platter.
Right. Plus, it gives you a lot of time to develop your alcoholism and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, you know, hey, bro, back in those days, it really was, I'm sure, sex, drugs, and rock and roll as it says. You know, that's stuff. I'm sure it exists today, but the stories, man, I hear from the guys who actually went through that time period are, you know, are just absolutely outlandish. And your foreigner story is actually very similar to, because I told you Scott Page, who played saxophone for Pink Floyd for years, he said when Pink Floyd called him up, he almost turned them down because he had no idea who Pink Floyd was. And I was like, are you kidding me, dude? I mean, this is in the 80s. I mean, he was just, you know, he grew up with the jazz background and stuff like that. So when he got a call from David Gilmour, he didn't take it seriously. And his response to Gilmour was, I'll have to get back to you in a few days. and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me, man? Like, if I got a phone call from David Gilmour, he wouldn't have been able to finish the sentence. I'd have been like, yes, no questions asked. You want me to play for half price? I'll play for half price, no problem. I'm in. You know, so yeah, I mean that's very much on par. You know, I mean, I can't imagine but it's a good thing that you did walk away from Foreigner, because that was the. I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, things wouldn't have went to work the way they did, you know. And you know, so your debut album with Huey and the News was the self-titled album, correct? Mm-hmm. It was in what, 1980, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, like within the next year and a half, 2 years, I mean, the debut album hits.
You're the guy who bought that record.
Oh, bro. Hey, look, I know my history on the News.
I think we sold about 3 of them. So,
dude, I tell you, maybe so. I mean, I know that the big stuff didn't actually happen until Sports. That was the big one. But then, but wasn't it?
Picture This.
Believe in Love. Wasn't that the album before Sports?
Yeah, Picture This. Right.
Yeah, Picture This. Right. So that was in like 82 or so, give or take.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, and then Sports. The reason why Sports is always cool with me is because that happened the same year I was born. So
get out of here, really?
Yeah, 1983, brother. So, you know, I mean, dude, I tell you, man, that's good stuff. You know, that music influenced multiple generations.
You never told me that came out the year you were born. That's funny.
83, man. You know, not ashamed of it, bro. I love being the 80s kid, man, because in my opinion, my generation is the last generation to go without. But we were one of the first ones who were still teenagers when the modern technology and stuff was starting to really pop up, like the internet and things like that, you know. And like, I didn't have an air conditioning in my house until I was a teenager. You know, we went without, and you didn't know anything was any different. Right. No big deal. I mean, nowadays, if you cut the air conditioner off for more than 5 minutes, you feel like you're on the verge of death. You know, especially here where I live, because I'm in Savannah. It's really humid, you know, and that was just. From 0 to 15, man, there was no AC.
Yeah.
And then when I was a teenager, you started getting dial-up internet and things like that, you know. But being born in 83, man, I mean, you know, I love the fact that I was born in the 80s. Although part of me wishes, though, that I would have been born maybe like in the late 50s. That way, by the time I was late teens, going into my 20s and stuff, I could have experienced that late 60s, 70s music, man, because that stuff... Some of that stuff is the most influential to me.
It was great. It was great. I'm so glad I got to live through that whole thing. It was really great.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, so yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, dude, the music influenced multiple generations. And when you know, I know you're a really modest guy. You're a super nice guy and everything. But when you hear stuff like that, man, I mean, how do you process that and how does it make you feel?
It's kind of funny because I get mail from people and they say things like you're the reason I play bass, or you're the reason that I've had people say you're the reason I'm still alive. You know, I mean, it's really incredibly.
You don't know what music does to people.
Yeah, and when you hear things like that. There's the kind of a disconnect. It's hard to believe that you had that kind of effect on large numbers of people. It really is. It's extremely. It's very. It's complimentary, but it kind of puts a responsibility, a sense of responsibility on you. You know that like.
Sure.
Like when we used to play shows, I used to sometimes you can kind of gets old a little bit. You're playing the same set, and we used to have to play the same set because the lighting and stuff, you know, was all computer done. So you have the same set of music, same order, and I was, whenever I'd find myself feeling like I was getting too used to it, I would start going out to watch the crowd coming in. So I'd go out after sound check. I'd go out and like hide in the tractor trailers or wherever they were, and I'd watch the audience coming in. And you'd see the kids coming in, and they got last year's tour shirt on, and they're listening to your album they're all listening to music on the way in, and that would always give me a sense of a beautiful responsibility to make a good show, you know, and that would keep it from getting flat for me. It would always pump me back up into realizing that this is somebody's moment, you know.
Absolutely.
It may not be my moment, but it's somebody's moment, and I am responsible for them to have a good moment, you know. So, yeah.
Well, dude, I mean, I tell you that time period of music, you know, and I tell you too, it's some people. I find people that either really love the '80s or they weren't too fond of it. You know, one of the two. You know, and I think the ones that weren't too fond of it are the Zeppelin style people. You know, the ones who they like that '60s, '70s sound, and then the '80s came in and the drum machines popped in and all that kind of stuff. You know, and some people seem to. You know, there's like in my opinion, a small section of them that just seem to disconnect from it. But personally, that '80s vibe, man, that whole time period, to me, maybe it was because I was born then. I don't know, but I've always kind of resonated, or it's always resonated in me. You know, so I mean,
I think it probably does have a lot to do with when you're born, because it seems like most people have a period. You know, and it's usually somewhere in there from 0 to 20 that just means the world to them. You know, music with their music and their taste of music, and so it probably has something to do with that, at least a little bit.
Oh, for sure. I mean, so like, so let's see, sports was '83, and then a couple years later, man, I mean, it really starts to. I mean, you guys really hit the peak, in my opinion, which was during the Back to the Future timeline, wouldn't you say? I mean,
yeah,
you know, Power of Love and things like that come out, and you know, and all of a sudden it's real. I mean, you guys were already mainstream, and now all of a sudden you're hitting Hollywood, man. I mean, it's really huge. And during that same time period, that was the same era as We Are the World. You know,
right.
You guys were involved in that. I believe it was the same exact year the Back to the Future come out, and both of them were in '85.
That period was a dream come true for our manager. I mean, our manager was you know, he was doing magical work, and we gave him every opportunity to take all these offers, and you know, he really did a great job. The We Are the World was, I mean, We Are the World was one thing, but Back to the Future was just genius to get that for us. You know, it really was. And we tended to be able to back him up. You know, if he would get us into a corner, we'd get ourselves out of it with a song like Power of Love or something. You know, we would always come through for him.
Which is another dream come true for a manager.
Yeah, I think so.
Never left him hanging.
Yeah. We Are the World was pretty intense.
What was that like, man? I mean, being in there with, I mean, you pretty much had every icon of the industry over that past decade or more in that room at the same time.
It was amazing. It was really amazing. And it's funny because it was, you know, I remember after We Are the World, we had to stay up all night. We worked until about 10 a.m. We started at about 10 the night before after the Grammys. And so when we left at about 10 o'clock, and Bill and I flew home together. And I remember all the way home, we didn't talk on the plane. And he came home with me, and we actually went to my house and went swimming and just kind of talked for a long time. But we were, it was the closest thing to having walked on the moon, I think, is what it felt like. You'd done something that it wasn't even a dream come true. It was further than that. It was a completely impossible thing to have happened. Impossible to have, not only to have us be there, but just that grouping of musicians was together for a night. You know, it was impossible, and we got to be part of it. It was really great. And you know, I mean, like for example, when we got there, there was the room where the music was, and then there was an ante room, and only the musicians could come into the studio. No managers, no girlfriends, nobody. And the only person who was allowed to have someone was Ray Charles, and Stevie Wonder had a guy to help him around, you know. Sure. But so when we come walking into the place, and they grab all our managers, and you're staying here, and you guys go in there, and we went in. So we go walking into the studio, and here's Bob Dylan sitting on the floor reading a comic book. And here's Stevie Wonder, for God's sake, is sitting at the piano noodling around, and Kenny Rogers, and I mean, it was as it turned out, Ray Charles and I really hit it off. And we
what was that like? Ray's a icon, man.
We were dancing together, man. It was funny. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Stevie did a version of a Harry Belafonte song, because Harry was there too, and right. He said, "If you want," I can't remember the words. It was something like, daylight come and we want to go home.
The Banana Boat song.
Yeah, right. So he's talking about. I can't remember exactly what he said, but the last word was, "You have to be driven home by me or Ray." You have to be driven by me or Ray. That's great.
Oh man.
and then, you know, Michael Jackson was a really cool guy. He was really great. He was very gracious and yeah, there's really no way to describe it. I watched the movies of there's a making of, you know, and it doesn't scratch the surface, you know, because it was so special.
And it's the original, man. I mean, you know, I find that sometimes those really special things, when they try to replicate them, it just doesn't have the same feel. I mean, I know they've tried to do another We Are the World. With a bunch of modern artists, and you know, to me, it didn't have the same vibe. I mean, I get the sentiment, and it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't quite the same. And they tried that with Woodstock too. You know, I mean, Woodstock,
right.
69.
Well, even Live Aid, even Live Aid. You know, they that was kind of right after, and it was supposed to be the same vibe, and you know, like giving, but. It wasn't. Backstage, it was just like people were. I mean, there were a lot of people there who didn't know where Chad was, you know, let alone what was going on over there. They just it became real commercial, and it did not feel that way when we did it. I mean, that song was such a big hit that I think it kind of maybe felt commercial later, but when we did it, it wasn't. It was like you say, it was the first one.
It was the first, man. So you can't take that away from anyone. You know, once you're the originator and you were part of the that original ensemble, that's something, man. I mean, I still listen to that song every once in a while today, and it'll still give me some goosebumps, man. You know, because that's just the thought. I mean, I heard somebody joking one time. They were like, "Man, if somebody had really wanted to screw the music industry up that day, all they had to do was attack that building or something." And I was,
right.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think about it like that. It's like, geez. I mean, all those iconic artists were just there at one time, and I've seen the pictures. you know, with all of you guys in the big group photo and everything. And, you know, you can see you right there, man, in the picture with the sunglasses on up in the corner.
Yeah.
And you were always rocking the sunglass vibe, man. How did that exactly come to be with the sunglasses and the cigarette, man? That's
funny.
That became your signature look.
Yeah, it was a kind of an accident because when we started the band, I used to jump around as much as anybody else, and the way it happened was we were doing a TV show, and I don't remember which show it was, but we were doing camera tests. And so they'll do camera checks on the front line and they'll do camera checks on the back line. So they were doing a camera check on Huey, and so we did a whole run past the song, and they were concentrating on Huey. So since I knew I wasn't, you know, the focus of anything, I just did what I would normally do if I didn't have anyone watching, which is I would lean on my amp and I had a cigarette. I was smoking a cigarette, so anyway, we did this pass, and Bob Brown, our manager, comes up to me and goes, Mario, do you think you could do that thing like for the whole song? And just and I said, what thing? What are you talking about? He goes, well, you know, where you just like look bored and look kind of mean, you know? And because my dad used to hound me about looking like that, because if given my own, it was left to my own devices, I would kind of scowl, and my dad hated that. He said, you should look friendly. People don't want to, people be afraid of you. So anyway,
man, I hate when people tell me that.
Yeah, right. So Bob, our manager, asked me if I would do this, and he said, you know, wear the sunglasses, and the cigarette is great, and I said, Bob, I don't know if I can do that. I said, my mom is going to just kill me if I'm on TV doing that. And he said, oh, come on, man, try it. So I did it, and it was a huge hit. I mean, I think what it was is there was no contrast in the band without it. Because otherwise, just a bunch of happy guys bouncing around the stage.
Really, I mean, so aside from, you know, obviously Huey, who's the front man, in my opinion, you were the most recognizable one of the actual News because of that look. I mean,
right.
I remember the first time that you know, that I had your name mentioned to me, you know, which was Tony Sarno. Mm-hmm. Tony's the one who introduced the two of us, and big shout out to our friend Tony over in Nashville. Tony. But you know, when he said, he goes, "Hey man, do you know Mario Cipollina?" I was like, "Oh man, freaking Mario! Are you kidding me? The guy with the sunglasses and the cigar? Oh, shit, yeah, man, I know who Mario is." Yep. You know, because immediately that's what I went to, mm-hmm. And you know, and I tell you, that's another thing. You know, since I told you this is like a business industry podcast, mm-hmm. you know, that's part of that branding. Yeah. You know, that was your personal brand, and it was important because it made you instantly unforgettable. Yeah. You know, and, you know, so yeah, your manager telling you to do that was spot on. Yep. And it's hilarious to me, though, how you told her your mom was going to be mad.
Yeah. That was my only concern, really. I had nothing else to worry about, but mom was going to kill me.
Hey, well, keep those family values going, man. Screw rock and roll. You know, the industry might be done with you one day, but hey, you don't want to meet mom's wrath.
That's right. That's right. Sure. She forgave me.
Oh, good. You know, so yeah, dude. I mean, those are some incredible memories there, man. Seriously, I mean, the stories there are amazing. And right after Back to the Future and We Are the World, you guys put out which would probably be your second most successful album, which is 4 in '86. Is that correct?
4.
Yep, and that was time period for that, right? About a year after We Are the World.
Yes, but 86.
Yeah, 86. Right, 86. So yeah. And I mean, you know, so you guys pretty much rode that decade. I mean, you guys were putting out one hit after another. You were getting all these amazing experiences. You know, I mean, did you ever have a thing going on where, and I've talked to a lot of performers where, you know, it was all going by so fast that they a lot of guys tell me, that it went by so fast that they didn't stop enough to appreciate or things like that, and then all of a sudden it wasn't there anymore and they didn't appreciate it the way they should. Was that ever a thing for you, or did you always make sure that you had time to kind of soak it all in and appreciate it?
I think that I was more appreciative than many or most, but there really wasn't a lot of time to reflect. Sure. We were just moving fast. We played about 210 cities a year for all the 80s, So we do 210 cities and then do an album in between. So we come off the road and do an album and then go back out. And so there wasn't a lot of time. I wish. I mean, I don't know how. I don't know how I could have done things differently and appreciated it more. I mean, I definitely did I did the kind of the car and motorcycle thing. I didn't have a lot of time, so I made sure and fill my garage. I had 5 Harleys and a couple, 2 Gold Wings, and I had a stable of nice cars. And that was about as much as I could do to appreciate it. Besides marriages and divorces and all that stuff, I did all that kind of thing. But I never felt, I really could honestly say that I was never someone that took it for granted, or that like some people would start running from fans instead of embracing them. Some artists you may know of that kind of get
I met a few.
Yeah, right. That run from it and try to hide from it, and like when I'd be out with my children, sometimes a lot of times we would be at a fair or something like that, and my son would say, they're starting to clump. You see the thing. They kind of gather before they come on for autographs and stuff, and so he would say, "Oh, it's happening," and he would act like, not spoiled, but he would be like, "Oh, well, here it comes," And I'd say, I always used to say, Carlo, we got to appreciate these people because they do a lot for us.